good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you to eXp Realty for sponsoring today's episode. Talent Finders would like to welcome entrepreneur and founder of PhotoPad, Diane Najm. So welcome, Diane.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here to talk with you.
So Diane, firstly, I'd like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you share with us how your entrepreneurial journey started?
Yes, it's kind of an exciting journey I have been on and one that I was not expecting. And that was started as a social worker originally. And I worked about 20 years in the inner city of Detroit. And I worked with women and children who've been abused.
Yes.
And helping them heal and connecting them to resources and empowering them. And what happened was I started my first app, PhotoPad, on Facebook as Facebook was just beginning. So everybody was on MySpace moving over to Facebook. And I was at the dinner table after a long vacation in Italy with my family. And I said to my husband, Facebook is kind of cool, but they don't have a photo app. How can you possibly share photos in an album? Because that's what I was used to doing. I mean, you grew up Greek, you tell stories, you show people photo albums at dinner parties. And I felt like Facebook had become our living room. We were all there just sharing static photos. But to me, that was kind of boring and I could care less. And I was scrolling through.
Yes.
And he said to me, well, what are you thinking? And I said, I'm not thinking anything. I think Facebook needs to do this. And he's like, you can do it. And that's how it all started. I said, really? So he had set up a team and I conveyed my vision and we worked together and we produced this app within Facebook originally for consumers, for people to just share photo stories of their celebrations, girls' night out, or weddings, or whatever it may be. And then we started adding things like virtual gestures and e-cards and postcards. So it was all within Facebook, this very encompassing software for people to use to help them stand out, to help them engage and build relationships with people around the world. And that led to an award. After I was doing it for about 2 years, I was peaking at 250,000 users, and Pinterest and Instagram started coming out. So new photos kind of sharing platforms were starting to merge. And of course, I always look at change and what needs to be done. And I won an award for Mom Business of the Year. And in the press release, they asked me, well, where are you going next with PhotoPad? And I said, I think businesses need to use PhotoPad. They were just coming on, and this is long before photo stories were popular. And I said, I think they need to tell their story and build relationship with their customers, because at this time, Facebook was the predominant platform. Because social media was the way to engage your customers. And so that's how it all began, and it just keeps evolving. So I decided to stop my social work practice and move totally 100% into immerse myself into the entrepreneurial world.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but I still keep an arm of giving back through philanthropy, working with kids in that way and helping them. And I always had that goal of doing that. I always felt like I needed to do more on an upper level to trickle down so the kids would receive things.
Yes.
As well as I had the other piece where I was actually working one-on-one with them. So that's how it all began.
Amazing. So you've had such a diverse career, having been in social work and jumping into the tech startup world, which are two very different ends of the spectrum. So what was your motivation and inspiration for this? Like, what inspired you to actually do this?
Yeah. So, I often think about that question a lot, because I never had imagined that my life would unfold in this way. And especially in the second half of life, where everybody else is getting ready to retire, I'm just revving up with a whole new career, which has been very kind of cool.
Yeah. And I don't think there's such a thing as retirement these days anyway. I mean, unless you've got copious amounts of money, I don't really think retirement is an option.
No, I agree with you, but traditionally, the way we grew up, I didn't imagine that I would be like in this position today and still revving up. My brother often says that to me as they're retiring. He's like, you're just like a machine. You just keep going. And like you said, who retires? And doing this has given me more possibility and more energy to really show people you don't have to retire. You can do whatever you want to do and make it a success as what you want to. So what inspired me was really what was accidental was, beginning this photo sharing app on Facebook, which we did end up closing because as Pinterest and Instagram and a number of other photo sharing apps came out, it became very crowded space. And I'm sorry, I'm diverting a little bit, but when I moved into PhotoPad for Business on the web, I decided to close our Facebook app. It was too confusing having two different platforms.
Yes.
But that was kind of like when I decided to close it, I decided to stop being a social worker as a full-time position. And I decided to become an entrepreneur and the head of my own company full-time. And that's what inspired me, is that I knew that this would change small businesses and help them. And it transferred to my social work skills because I love to work with people. I love to provide resources and advocate and empower. So all these leadership skills I had, I was just diverting them to what I'm doing now in a different way. Because as small businesses, we struggle to stand out. We struggle to have the resources and the budget to do what's necessary to bring customers to us. And social media has become that number one platform for businesses to be able to convey and communicate who they are. And when I first started PhotoPad for businesses, it was just Adobe. And I couldn't afford a graphic designer or anybody. And that's what kind of drove what I'm doing today to help small businesses like myself. So it included me as the problem. And then when I had that press release asking where I was going, I had so many small businesses contact me from around the world. That led me to doing focus groups, and that led to the launch of PhotoPad. So what inspired me the most was small businesses and hearing their pain point.
Yes.
And knowing that it was the same as what I was experiencing and wanting to solve a problem.
Yes,
so and those are the same qualifications that you are as a social worker, right?
Yes, exactly. So within that, what would you say some of your biggest lessons and learnings have been within your career?
That's a great question. Another one I ponder on a lot because there's been so many things. I think back to I'm out of my comfort zone for sure. I mean, I was a very successful, very confident social worker, and taking a leap into the entrepreneurial world brought out a different personality. Although I just plunge into things and I move forward on the outer exterior, the inner exterior at first was very insecure. What am I doing? I'm in a male-dominated world. How do I possibly move past this, right? But I really grasped some inspirational quotes that I live by. And one is that you have to push through that fear. And once you do, you land on the other side. I often think about you have to make decisions, right or wrong, for your company, and that's how you grow. So those are some of the lessons I learned. And I think every time I learn a lesson, I grow stronger as a leader. I feel like I'm still growing, but I'm far from where I was when I first began, and there's nothing wrong with beginning naive, not knowing. And I tell people,
of course, that's how you learn, right?
Right. And I mentor a lot, and I mentor a lot of early stage startups, and I love doing that again. It's that social worker in me because I want to share with them what I learned and how they can keep moving forward. And I always get disappointed when I see someone quit, because one of the things is everybody wants to quit at a stage where it's uncomfortable, where you're really rock bottom. But it's from that you gain the strength to move forward. And I know it sounds corny, but it's very true, No,
absolutely.
The other biggest lesson is I think I tend to plunge into things, which is fine, but I often learn lessons afterwards. And it's really about firing really fast people you hire on because you don't have a lot of money and you can't waste money. But I have to say I made that mistake, but I've heard other leaders talking about it too, which has been great. You know, if things are not working with you and somebody else, is to let it go. Don't keep trying really hard to make it work.
No.
And I think that's an area I grew in, because I tend to be really nice and a pleaser, but in the end, I know my value, but it's a little bit late. But now I cut things off at the knees fairly quickly. If you're not working, goodbye. You know, this is what I expect. But that comes with time. It's that inner and outer confidence that really gets built up. And it's something I don't know that I had being a social worker. So it's been very interesting, the strength and confidence I've built since I've done this startup.
Amazing. So I want to, speaking of, as you say, hiring and firing. So obviously I want to talk about leadership, or the lack of leadership, from both a global and entrepreneurial perspective, and what makes your leadership style different, and why are you so passionate about women's empowerment, and what do you believe needs to change the current narrative?
Again, a lot of great questions. One of the things I really feel important that needs to be a leadership skill is that you empower your team. You're as good as your team. And I really believe that. I think that, again, comes from that social work background. We all work together to solve the problems. So it was never me going to clients and telling them what to do. It was trying to find out where their strengths were and bringing them forward so that we were all a success in the end. And I think that's really important as a team leader, as a leader of your company.
Yes.
And the second thing I think is really important is just being really authentic with your team, because, including them in the ups and downs of the roller coaster ride of starting a company and making it run. And it's with your team, with your customers. I believe that what makes a good CEO and a leader is building that culture that makes them feel comfortable talking to you, bringing up ideas, and executing on things that your team feel is important to your company and your culture.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's work in progress. It doesn't work as smoothly as that, but that is our premise of what we want.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is that it's important to ask questions and listen very carefully. I think we tend to think we know everything, and we don't.
Yeah.
And sometimes the answers are there from your customers and from your team members. The one thing you don't want in your company is a lot of drama. And
no, definitely not.
Right. And I know I had some in the beginning, and this is what taught me that. And I see it a lot in startups, again, in the early stages. So it's something I think we go through to get to the other side, to learn what's best for my team. And that's why our team has been together since the inception of PhotoPad. We have been through the roller coaster ride, and it takes a lot to build that trust and relationship. And it helps build clarity and focus with the team. And I think that's really very great to have that skill. And I'm really proud of my team, because they are the ones that help make PhotoPad a success.
Yes, that's amazing. So within that, what would you say some of your biggest career highlights have been?
Oh my goodness. Well, one is being a successful social worker. I feel very proud of that. I feel very proud that I launched 2 tech platforms coming from a non-tech background, and really just entering into that male-dominated world. Back when I started the first PhotoPad, I went to an event and there was like 100 men there, and I was the only woman.
Yeah.
And that really was very interesting to me and very scary at first, but I just kept plunging through it. And that's when it was like really important for me to know that what I was doing was important, as it was when I was a social worker, because I needed to be change. I needed to be that inspiration for other women, that they can do it. And the third thing that is really rewarding to me is that I do philanthropy work, and I work to help kids. I have a very strong passion to help kids heal from abuse and have the same opportunities as other kids. And because they've had misfortune in their life, I really want them to have what they have, and connect them with programs or funding that they need to be successful.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's amazing. So touching on that or elaborating on that, having worked in social work for 20 years and serving on boards, would you say that this has helped you in the transition on your entrepreneurial journey with the skill set you have now as a founder? And if so, can you give us any examples?
Yeah, definitely serving on the board with prestigious CEO leaders in the community has always helped in this journey. You know, having them is almost like having mentors serendipitously, you know, just because they're there and you're talking and you're learning. And that's what's really important. And the things that I've really learned is that they have thick skins and they only learn that through life. And
Yes.
Helped me because I thought I needed to know everything. And I thought I was a failure because they looked so strong, whether they were women or men, but they had been in the industry a long time, but they were sharing stories that were very similar to my story, you know, in the beginning of trust and distrust and betrayal and how they overcame it. So those conversations were very helpful for me. Two is serving on the board helped with just being a stronger leader in the community and setting an example for your team members to go out and give back. Giving back is very important for me. You know, when I first started PhotoPad for business, I met with a number of leaders here in Seattle from Starbucks and Bartels and some of the top restaurant owners and oh gosh, I can't even think, but that they took the time and they all gave me a piece of advice. And that really resonates with me still today when maybe I'm feeling alone or I don't know what to do next is think about what they said, or I go back to that journal of what I wrote down, you know, they were great and that they would give back. And that's another thing that why it's so important to give back, especially to women, because we don't have this opportunity, these windows where people help us. And it's really important because as I've been in this industry now, it's grown. More women are starting their own companies. I said back in 2000, I think it was 18, that by 2019, women leaders were going to leave their positions in corporate world and start their businesses, probably over 50%. And that, I remember reading a statistic that happened. And it was because we know we can lead. And once somebody starts leading, that's a woman, other women will see that they can do it too. They start saying things like, I can do this, you know, I want to do this. And you see so many and I love it. I'm not alone anymore.
Yes. So you are also a keynote speaker and have spoken all over the US and North America. Is this something that came to you naturally? And how did these opportunities come about?
Right. No, they didn't come to me naturally. I love telling stories and I love to talk, but I tend to talk too much and I tend to go off topic. And sometimes when we're in meetings, I'm in 5 different topics and my team has to pull you back in.
Yes.
So I did have to hire someone to help me. And at first it was very uncomfortable because it wasn't me, but I soon learned because I'm very authentic and I like telling stories that maybe other people wouldn't tell, you know, but I want people to know me. I want them to leave and feel like, wow, I know her, you know? And so what started the whole speaking tour was people approach me because I was very early as a woman doing a tech platform, entering the software world. And that's how one thing led to another. It was a simple show as Chat with Women that was on here in Seattle that started. That was my first appearance. And I love that show. It's not here anymore. They used to chat. It was kind of like a morning show. And I even hired someone to help me how to answer. I was so nervous. And I started with papers and all this, and they kept telling me, you don't need that. I'm like, oh, no, I do. But now, of course, I don't need those notes and stuff. So that just kind of led one thing to the other. And then social media, my personal brand is really important because, again, I'm very authentic. If you know me, you're going to see my pictures, but you're going to see me in person. You're going to say, wow. And I've heard this. Wow, you look exactly. I knew who you were exactly by your picture. So I try to show every part of me on an authentic level. I'm not always polished. People want me to be more polished, but
Yes.
I'm not. It's just the way I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's who I am. That's why I don't want to lose that piece. But yeah, that's how it all started. And then I talked on social media about just generally like insecurities, fears, pushing past, leading, things like that, that led people like, I want you to speak. And it was truly an honor. Like I got to speak at a Microsoft conference. I got to speak at the Woman Who Code conference, and I was asked, and that's what was really cool. And for me, that was really cool because my husband worked at Microsoft. That's what brought us here. That changed my whole life. Was I grew up in a very traditional Greek family in Detroit, surrounded by family and, you know, day-to-day life.
Yes.
And he got a job with Microsoft, and that was his dream to be there. And he became a distinguished engineer. And I was like a housewife, an executive wife, and a mother and a social worker on the side at this point. And so I remember I came home and I gave him the brochure, and he's like, "What? You just spoke at Microsoft conference? What?" And it was kind of a funny moment because before that I was supporting him, but he was busy doing his startups as well. So I was doing my stuff, and I liked surprising him afterwards.
Amazing.
And yeah, and he said that. He's like, "Of course you did. You never ceased to amaze me." So
that's amazing.
It's been a fun journey, a hard one sometimes, but I still laugh. And I think that's really important. I laugh at myself sometimes. I think back like, right? But it's okay. I feel very successful. And I think that's what people need to do is really just embrace the fear, feel the success of where they are. I'm not where I want to be with my company, but I still have that dream of where I'm going. And that's what's really important.
Absolutely. So that leads me into, as a female founder, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see? And why do you believe that other female founders struggle to access funding? And how do we change the narrative?
Well, that's a great point. Wow, those are a lot of questions. What was the first one?
So as a female founder, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see? And why do you believe other female founders struggle to access funding? And how do we change that narrative?
Well, I think the biggest mistake I see is that we are underrated. It's just traditional that they want a white male leading. They'll accept a female who maybe graduated from a top university. But when I first started a startup, it wasn't about that. It was just scrappy startups, right? It didn't matter what background you came from, but that makes them feel safe for some reason. And I think that's the biggest mistake because I feel strongly that women have been the backbone and they are the leaders and that they should be funded more. You know, and the funny thing is that 4 years ago, they did a movement where women were going to get funded. We only had 1.8% of the funding, 2.8%. It hasn't changed. No. And that really irritates me because there's thousands of women funds out there that it hasn't moved. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it hasn't. I mean, it's always been at least less than 5% of women that access funding in $1 billion industry.
Yes. And that's kind of like a sore subject with me. The good thing is majority of the women I met with who own funds, they did give me great advice. They did lead me on my way, even if they didn't fund me. And I understand that everybody says that they fund women doesn't mean they fund every single woman, right? And they want to fund what they can get a call back on funding wise, money wise.
Yeah.
Which is great. So that's great. That's one of the great things is that there's been many more funds that are led by women. Two, recently, Melinda Gates has now, I believe, done something with a fund for women startups. She's partnered, and I think that's going to be a breakthrough there. Yes. But I just feel like the biggest mistakes is, I don't think it's a female founder side. I just think it's the industry. It's hard to change what's been going on overnight. It's just going to take time. We're farther along because we do all have startups. We have our own companies. That has grown, you know. we're making it without the funding. And that's what I talk a lot to people. And, I got that advice some time ago too, by a woman founder. She had 6 companies. She said the first 5 she couldn't even get funding for, but she ended up selling and made her money. And that's what led to her second one, third, fourth, and fifth. And her 6th one was much bigger, and she did get funding for that. But isn't that funny? And so sometimes when I feel like giving up, that does cross my mind for a second, but I never entertain it very long. I remember that. I remember her saying, you just keep going. You figure it out. That's what it's all about. And that's why we see a big failure rate, if you ask me, because people run out of money because they get it, the funding, and they quit, right? After 18 months, because that's the 18-month, they don't make it work. One of the good things for me that happened is I didn't get the funding. I've been bootstrapping. It's moved slower than I like, but I've become stronger. My baseline of the foundation of my company is stronger. And I know where I need to go. That's what's really important. And I believe I got funding earlier, that I could have been one of the statistics. But I think because I grew this and now we're going in a more innovative direction, we're going to really stand out. And one of my goals is to help women. So I do it now with mentoring and advising, but I really would like to start a fund, even if it's a small fund, and fund women, even if it's $1,000, is do something that helps them move forward.
Absolutely. So that leads me to the final question. What are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs, and how would you like to be remembered? What legacy? Some people don't like the word legacy. So how would you like to be remembered?
No, one of the legacies, I love that word. I'm owning that because I want to change for women. So I want to be known that I did help women, that I opened doors, that I gave opportunities. That's what I would like. And that is what I would like my legacy to be. And the lessons I learn and share is just what I've talked about, is one, is not to fear and uncertainty, is to push through that. That's one of the biggest lessons. 2 is I love this piece from Simon Sinek, is he talks about a leader is because they're not in charge, but because they have courage to go first, to trust first, to the unknown, and to take the risk. And I think that's the second piece of advice I feel like is a big lesson. And I try to tell people just to take that risk, because right or wrong, you're going to learn from it, right? It's not, the failure is not the end. And that's another one, is not to fear failure. You hear that all the time, but it's true, And the last one is most important, is surround yourself with people, mentors, advisors, coaches, people that can help you. And that is one of the biggest lessons, is to have a specific goal with each one, not to linger on with them. That was probably a big mistake I made in the beginning. I now, like when I work with people or advisors or mentors, is have a very short window of when we're going to work together, what it's going to be on, and then reevaluate. And that's, I think, really important lesson I learned on this journey.
Amazing, Dan. Well, thank you so much for your time. So if people wish to connect with you, what are the best platforms to do so?
Yes, that would be great. I love emails. So Diane@photopad.co. That's PHOTOPAD. I'm on LinkedIn under Photopad. Well, I think it's Photopad for Business. Facebook, the same, Photopad for Business, and Twitter. Come join Twitter as we discuss all things for small businesses and resources, and for our platform to help them create their visual content on social media.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And hopefully we can have you back in the future to see where you are in your journey. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.